Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
Let's talk product prioritization. Welcome to the Product Management Talk, and I hope, as always, you all are doing fantastic. In this episode, Abhishek and I discuss feature prioritization, which is one of the key jobs that a product manager has to do on a daily basis. We will be discussing product prioritization in two parts. In this episode, we're going to talk in general about the aspects that help a product manager decide on what features to prioritize. In the next episode, we would take a use case and go about actually seeing how a feature list is prioritized.
The Product Management Talk. Disclaimer: these videos, unless stated otherwise, are our own thoughts and ideas and do not reflect that of our company or third-party sources.
Hi Abhishek.
Hey Anand.
Abhishek, I was looking at some of the forums, and one of the questions that keeps coming up is how do product managers prioritize, or what prioritization should they use? So why not touch upon the core of prioritization, and then maybe we can look at some of the models, how they make sense, and maybe we can share one of our experiences, how we went about. What do you say?
I agree. I think that's a great idea. And, as a product manager, it's always a challenge to find out among the hundreds of requirements that we're getting from the leadership, from your partners or customers, from the sales. How do you prioritize and what you should focus on in the next 6 months? And how do you want to build that up? And it sort of again ties back to what we talked in our bonus episode around the 5 Ws. So, we can see how to prioritize based on the 5 Ws.
I would say there are several aspects to product prioritization or feature prioritization. The first is, what objectives are you trying to solve or you're trying to address? Those objectives could be market acquisition, it could be market expansion, it could be customer satisfaction, it could be increased customer engagement. Any of these or a mix of these could derive at an objective that you want to look at when you are looking at product prioritization.
If I add a point to what you said, it's more from the audience. If you want to look about what Anand just talked about, there is something that we used to use, which is called as an ANSOF matrix, which defines which segment, whether you want to capture more market or go into new market or build new product or build new features, right?
And I would like, the current product managers who are listening to this to share their comments if they have used ANSOF matrix, and if they have, what has been their feedback of using it. Has that been helpful to them, and how it has been helpful? Product prioritization primarily is driven by your clear understanding of who you're developing the product for. So the persona has to be absolutely crystal clear in your head. Why are you developing it for that person? So when we talk about why, Abhishek, it is not about the current problem that the customer has shared with us. It is about what has led to the current problem that the customer has been facing. So a lot of times when you as a product manager try to address a feature based on a certain problem, we might get myopic. And that is primarily because we have forgotten the bigger problem that the customer is trying to solve. And if you forget the bigger problem, then you start questioning your prioritization, because what has happened is you are starting to see the problem in isolation rather than the big picture. That 5W model that we discussed in a previous episode is very essential whenever we start with product prioritization. And why becomes essential? Because why tells you why you should do this versus something else, because that why ties back to why the customer is doing something or trying to ask something. So effectively, your why ties down to the customer's why, but it also ties down to your corporate why. Abhishek, would you want to add here something?
Yeah, I think Anand, more often than not, even seasoned product managers, we get lost in the symptoms so much that we focus on what the root cause is, and we try to address the symptoms instead of addressing the root cause.
Right, right.
And that's where the 5 Ws help us. In my mind, 5 Ws are the tools on which you are going to build. So if you're building out, let's say, a presentation which you want to present to your leadership, the 5 Ws analysis and everything can actually translate to a 2 slide deck, which shows like, hey, this is what we are going to do. This is why we need to do it. This is the first 4 use cases that we need to solve. And this is how we are going to solve it, or for who we are going to solve it. If going through that process helps you understand that what's causing those symptoms. It helps you understand or even do a post-mortem on how you can solve that problem, and that symptom can actually be solved by maybe taking care of or building of 2 or 3 core use cases in the product, right? So keep that in mind as you work through your strategy, work through your prioritization. It's very important to understand and differentiate what is a symptom versus what is the root cause. So let's start with, so there is the why, the what, the who, the where, and the how, right? And if you look into this, you can think of a circle where each of them is a point. So everything is connected. It's not like you can start anywhere. But typically in my case, I start with the why, so it's easier to understand why am I putting an effort. And that sort of ties into what's the value. It can be, as Anand started in the beginning, the what can be, it's a leadership initiative or the corporate vision. The what can be you're driving the customer engagement or customer adoption or market adoption. Or it can be a differentiator among the existing space of products. Or it can be like you're trying to capture a absolutely new market in a different geographic area, right? So that essentially what it's about. Then comes the aspect of the who, right? So who are you doing this for? It can be, right? So it can be like the product is for absolutely new partners or customers that you have in the market, so that you can increase the space, or it can be increase existing wallet share among the existing partners. So it drives the inbound customer expenses and move it towards your company versus distributing among similar companies, or go and increase your market share. So that's something that you need to understand when you're building the product. You cannot, in some cases, both the aspects might be true, but more often than not, you're going to start at certain position and then probably see how we expand and cross the 2 markets. So we talked about the why, we talked about the what, and we talked about the who. The where, to be honest, I don't put too much focus on where. If you're building a business case, I think the where for any of the legacy or the incumbents, the where is pretty much defined, right? There is, you're either building it for a certain geographic area and you want to build over there. The where is actually more crucial for emerging products or startups, where they need to understand, if I'm going to build certain product, which market or where I should go and build the product for. That's a crucial aspect. But pretty much, I think if you're working for an existing company which already has a product, I think the where is less important in those kind of scenarios. Anand, I hope I'm being right over there.
So Abhishek, where has a few aspects to it. One is when you are a startup, definitely geography is a where. Your target market is a where. Okay. More importantly these days, how you are delivering it is also a where, because if you are delivering it using a mobile app, a web page, right, if you are a content provider, your CDNs are where, because where you are delivering your content from, are you distributing it across or not? If you are a big, let's say, Amazon kind of retailer, Where are you delivering your Amazon website from? Is it amazon.in? Is it amazon.com? Is it amazon.nz? Right? So where your data centers are, where you are delivering your content from, where you are delivering your website from, how is it different? Because Indian customer will have different set of needs than a customer who's based out of Australia versus who's based out of Japan. And that's why when you would go to the local Amazon websites, you will have different catalogs. So where is very important. It is just that it is not a classical way of just geography. It has actually
Yeah.
expanded to be more holistic than it was earlier,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it is important because if you have to buy something which is very local to Japan, and let's say Amazon Japan allows you to buy in India, then the supplier there has to have the capacity to supply you down all the way to your home, wherever you are put up in the world, if you're not in that local geography. So those weights have to be considered when you are building the product, right? So all W's are important.
Quite often, and even in this discussion, I think the people will find that the who and the where sort of ties to each other. That's not necessarily true. The who talks about the demographics, like what kind of customers you're going to talk about. It cannot be like if you're building a product for Indian customers, so the who and the where remains same, right? Where can be a physical location, or where can be a virtual location, as Anand talked about. It can be a data center based out of India, or it can be people of Japan. So that's where you're targeting, and the rest sort of fits into it. But who is taking that into a very different level where you're talking about what the demographics are for the customers you are selling this product to. Organizations also, not just people. It can be organizations, it can be people, it can be agencies. So who encompasses all that entities, whether physical, human, or it can be a legal entity that you're trying to deliver it for, like an organization or an agency. So the last one is how. So how you're going to build the product, and that's I think in my mind, Anand, the how is more of something that you work with your UX, you work with your architects to define the how that delivery should happen. It can be, hey, if you take the example of Uber, let's say, um, the initial days the payment was not via any kind of online or a software related app. It was like you go hand over the cash payment and be done about it. And that's the very simplest thing. If you want to define the how, one thing I've learned in the last couple of years is define the manual process to do it. And once you have defined the manual process, start translating that into an automated process, which is more scalable and performing and resilient. But if you don't know how the manual thing works right now, it's going to be very hard for you to define the how, which is a very good, which is a better solution. You got anything to
Yeah,
add?
I mean, I think there are two parts to how, and I think you laid it out very well. The first is a non-tech process there, which you are replacing with technology. So the first thing is your non-technology process should be clearly, the workflow should be very well defined. So that is
Yeah.
how to do that. The second how is how you do it technologically. But the other part of how is when you're solving it technologically or you're solving it manually, how much effort is involved by the people who are solving that how. So if you are solving it technologically, there are engineers who have to work and they have to do certain amount of coding or stitching things together, deploying. All that becomes part of how. So there are resources involved in time, money, effort, which goes into solving that problem, and that is addressing the how. And that is critical because if you figure out that the cost of doing something is more than the benefit that the person is going to accrue
Yes.
out of delivering that feature, then maybe the manual process is good enough. So, Abhishek, how is important? Because, as you rightly said, there is an impact that you want to make from the product in terms of getting people to use it. There is you want to reach out to the people quickly enough, and then There's a certain effort that is involved in solving it to a certain extent. And finally, how much confidence you have of all of that coming together, right? So one of the models actually is called RICE, Reach, Impact, Confidence, Effort, RICE model. And I think what we both say is, if you look at our previous episode where we just spoke about who can become a product manager or why become a product manager, we again touched upon solving the problem using the 5 Ws. Here also, we strongly advocate that when you look at any problem and break it down into those 5 Ws, you effectively would reach to any of those models that are there in, you can go and read about it. There are plenty of product prioritization models. It is essential that the fundamentals of your understanding of who you're building the product, why you're building the product for that person or that entity, what involves in building that product, how you are going to build the product, where all that product is going to make an impact, and when is that product set essentially important is the 5 aspects which will make your prioritization as watertight as possible. Because otherwise, what would happen is you might end up making a product for a persona that doesn't exist, or for a market that doesn't exist, or in a time when people are not ready to consume that product. It might be too early or too late. You might push your engineering to create a product which might become very expensive over time, either to manage and maintain or to just build it up.
If I have to say, the when is very, I think when we talked about the when, it was a 6W, and we were saying like it's not really important. But I'm sort of connecting this to the whole COVID pandemic that's going on. If I had to look at one of the most popular teleconferencing tools that there is right now, it was something that no one used to care about, right? No, there was not a lot of focus over there. It was innovating, but it was in what I would like to call it as an incremental innovation happening. Whereas because of COVID, it's right now one of the biggest teleconferencing tools in the market, and they probably invested millions of dollars in order to make that scalable, in order to make that secure, in order to make that one of the most popular tools that there is right now. So I think, we talked about all the steps that's needed for prioritization. Now, if you understand the 5 Ws, to summarize what you said, Anand, if you know the 5 Ws, you can take these 5 Ws and fit into any number of the models that is there, right? That's the easy part. But the hard part is to understand the 5 Ws and differentiate each of the Ws and see what it needs and what needs to be done. And if you are able to do that, it's going to be a very simple thing to prioritize as to what you want to do in the next 6 months versus midterm versus long term. Right? So,
right. And I would add here is that when you are addressing 5 Ws, please quantify with numbers as much as possible. In fact, we will share with you guys links to some of the good blogs that are there which talk about product prioritization tools. And every tool that you would read about works the best when you supply it with data. And each W that we have discussed here, the more data that you can get and harden it with, the better the results would come out. And at that point in time, your discussion with your engineering team, with your peers, with your seniors, with other teams that you work with would be that much factual. So then all guesswork will go out and you will have very concrete reasons why you want to do something. Now, it is possible that you may not get numbers for all of it, or you may get numbers for all of it, but not to the extent that you want, but that's okay. As far as you have numbers, you are still better off than the person who doesn't have any number. So the more details you have, the better. But have that. And that's where the frameworks become useful, because a framework with no data is just a framework. It doesn't help you.
It it's a whole lot of assumptions without any facts driving.
Right, right. So when you come up with a set of features and you want to know how, go back to your engineering team, discuss with them, and that's where methodologies such as design thinking or agile or Kanban or all those come up, because what you're doing it, you're not taking decisions in isolation. You are discussing it with your product architect. You are deciding it, sitting with your development teams. You are trying to sit down with your UX UI guy and understand and estimate what it takes for them to build it, because all of that ties down into how. That would help you understand what is the time estimate, what's the cost estimate that would go into delivering a feature that you're asking. And then you can figure out, okay, if this is the amount of effort that is going in, does it, how it stands vis-a-vis the impact that's going to make, how much reach I can increase, what markets I can reach out to, am I increasing the market share with this reach, or am I increasing the market itself by doing it? So all that makes really a lot of importance then, and that's the reason, without naming the video call brand that is doing really good over others. So there are I think multiple video conferencing tools out there, but one tool name is today most prominent, and it's leading because I think they did the things right. They figured out early on how to tackle this problem, and they went ahead doing it.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. So just to summarize, guys, 5 Ws stand for why, who, where, what, and how. Right? There's a 6th W called when, which is depending on situation, as you can see, is critical. And if you understand these 5 Ws very well, it will help you in a lot of aspects. It will help you define your business case. It will help you prioritize your requirements. It will also help you understand or differentiate between the symptoms versus the root cause.
Thanks, Abhishek, for summing it up. And there are multiple product prioritization models. As I said, we'll share the link in the description below. You guys can go and have a look. But at the core of it, as Abhishek and I discussed, the 5 Ws will help you make those models that much successful. And based on your organization, where you're working, either if you've been asked to use a certain model or you like certain model, these 5 Ws will then help you use those models with great efficacy going forward. So if you guys have any comments or if you have any questions, please write it down. We'll try to address it in our next episodes. And please do subscribe, comment, and like our videos, and share it with others who you think would get benefited from our discussions. And if there is any topic that you want us to discuss in future, please share with us. And for those who are excited to share their thoughts and want to be part of our discussion, you are most welcome to join me and Abhishek in one of our product management talk.